The conference room hums with the low murmur of a dozen conversations scattered across the table. Then the door opens and a late arrival steps inside, scanning the room with a tight, worried expression. Nobody says a word about the look on her face, but the temperature of the room seems to drop. Within 30 seconds, the buzz quiets, several hands have drifted to chins, and the air feels heavier. How can a single worried face reshape an entire room without a single explanation passing through the air? She takes her seat, still silent, and the others begin to glance at their own notes more intently. The worry did not arrive with a label, a speech, or a company-wide alert, yet it has already spread. Psychologists have a name for this silent movement of feeling through a group of people. They call it emotional contagion, and it happens far more often than most of us realize. Emotional contagion is a process by which one person's emotions transfer to another, often without either person consciously choosing it. At first glance, the explanation seems straightforward. We see a frown, we unconsciously mimic it, and then we feel a trace of worry ourselves. That simple mimicry story covers part of the truth, but it leaves a much larger question hanging in the air. After all, not everyone in that room mimicked the late arrival's tightened jaw or avoided her eyes. The expression on one face led each person to a slightly different internal destination, and that makes contagion more complicated than a copy machine. To understand why, it helps to step back and look at the oldest layer of this process, the automatic wiring that connects faces to feelings. From our earliest months, humans match the expressions they see on the people around them, long before they have words for happy or sad. A baby will often smile back at a smiling face, or grow distressed when hearing another infant cry. Scientists believe that certain brain cells fire both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing it, creating a kind of internal echo. This neural mirroring may help explain why a smile can tug our own mouth upward before we have made any decision to feel friendlier. But automatic mimicry is only the first note of the melody, not the whole song. If emotional contagion were nothing more than facial mirroring, then emotions would spread best when people can clearly see each other's faces. Researchers have observed that people communicating only through written words can still transfer feelings of anger, joy, or sadness to one another. That means something deeper is traveling between minds, something that does not need a visible eyebrow or a curved lip to deliver its signal. Look again at the conference room and notice what happened the moment after the late arrival's worried expression registered. Each person, in a fraction of a second, did not just mimic the face. They silently asked a variation of the same urgent question. The question was not spoken aloud, but it ran through their bodies like a quickening pulse. Does this situation contain a threat that matters to me? Emotional contagion, then, is not simply catching a feeling like a cold. It is catching a piece of social evidence and rapidly interpreting what it means for your own safety, status, or goals. That interpretation happens so quickly and so automatically that it feels like the emotion simply arrived from outside. In truth, the feeling was assembled inside your own nervous system, using the other person's expression as raw material. This assembling process is shaped by several forces that can turn a small worry into a room-wide wave. One powerful force is the simple fact that groups tend to synchronize their emotional states when they feel connected to one another. Sports fans standing shoulder to shoulder find their heart rates rising and falling in similar patterns as the game unfolds. Protesters marching together often report a shared surge of energy that makes individual fears feel smaller and collective determination feel larger. This synchronization can be helpful for cooperation, but it also means that an emotion introduced at the right moment can set the rhythm for the entire group. A second force involves who carries the emotion into the room in the first place. The feelings of a person seen as a leader, an expert, or an insider tend to spread more quickly than those of someone perceived as an outsider. In our conference room, if the late arrival is known to have crucial information, her worry will travel faster than if she were a complete stranger. The group's existing relationships act like channels that either speed up or slow down the movement of feeling. A third force turns up the volume. Once a few people begin to show unease, the room itself starts providing emotional cues to everyone in it. Someone who was only mildly concerned now sees 3 colleagues looking anxious, and that new evidence intensifies their own concern. This creates a positive feedback loop, where each person's reaction becomes part of the signal that others respond to, amplifying the original spark. It is the same loop that can turn a quiet comment section into a storm of outrage, or make a single nervous laugh cascade into a room full of giggles. What makes this amplification especially powerful is that the original emotion rarely stays in its pure form as it spreads. The late arrival's personal worry about a client meeting can ripple outward and become a general sense that the company is in trouble. Your colleague's anxiety about a sick family member can drift into the team as a vague feeling that the project is doomed. Emotional contagion rarely carries precise labels with it, so people attach the diffuse feeling to whatever concern is already living in their own mind. This is why a single tense face can silence a room in seconds. It provides the raw arousal, and each receiver supplies their own reason. Understanding this, we start to see that the boundary between my emotion and the group's emotion is thinner than we usually imagine. But is emotional contagion always a problem that we need to resist? The fact that feelings spread so easily seems at first like a design flaw in the human social mind. It suggests that we are sponges with no filter, constantly absorbing whatever mood happens to drift past us. Yet that very ability to rapidly share emotions probably solved deep survival problems for our ancestors, and it still serves critical purposes today. Picture a group of early humans spotting a potential predator in the tall grass. The fear reaction of one observer had to travel to the whole group in an instant, before any verbal warning could be yelled. Shared joy after a successful hunt or a communal celebration strengthened bonds and made cooperation more likely in the future. Emotional contagion is not a mistake of evolution. It is a rapid communication channel that operates beneath language to keep groups coordinated. The cost arises when the signal that spreads is based on an incomplete read, a private worry, or a misunderstanding that no one stops to clarify. Now pause and return one more time to that quiet conference room, because the story is about to turn. Everyone in the room believes they are independently reacting to a real atmosphere, a pressure that exists objectively in the air. But much of that pressure was created by the very process of people looking at each other and interpreting what they saw. The group did not merely catch an emotion. The group built a collective emotional climate out of one person's expression and a dozen silent predictions. This is the reversal that changes how we understand the spread of feelings through any social space. Emotional contagion is not passive infection, and it is not mindless mimicry. It is active, moment-by-moment sense-making performed simultaneously by every brain in the room. Each person is running a quick, unconscious simulation of what the other person must be feeling, and what that means for their own immediate future. The simulation draws on a lifetime of learning about danger, trust, belonging, and the specific dynamics of that particular group. So when the late arrival's worry spreads through the room, it is because 12 minds independently reached the same urgent conclusion. This situation may not be safe. The power of the conclusion does not come from anyone shouting it. It comes from the eerie speed with which separate nervous systems arrive at the same story without a single vote being cast. What we call emotional contagion is, at its deepest level, a form of rapid social consensus building that operates below the level of conscious debate. That makes it extraordinarily efficient, but it also makes it vulnerable to catastrophic error. A group can build a shared reality out of one person's indigestion, a misunderstood email, or a memory of an entirely unrelated failure. Here lies the central insight, the one that changes how we see the room and how we see ourselves inside it. The feeling that spreads through a group is never just a copy of one person's emotion. It is the group's first draft of a shared story about what is happening, written in the language of heart rate, muscle tension, and the urge to speak or stay silent. That story feels objective because it arrives so quickly, but it is always an interpretation, and interpretations can be revised. The wave of worry that swept the conference room was not an unstoppable force of nature. It was a provisional agreement that nobody realized they were signing, and agreements can be reopened the moment one person asks a different question. This does not mean we can simply decide not to feel what a group is feeling. Our bodies will still register the tension. But understanding the construction behind the feeling gives us a pause button that was not available when we believed we were merely infected. In that pause, we can ask whether the group's emotion is an accurate response to the facts or a social echo that has outgrown its original cause. That single question is the difference between being swept away by a mood and navigating it with your eyes open. So what changes, practically speaking, when we understand emotional contagion as co-creation rather than contamination? First, it becomes possible to notice the early moments of a group's emotional shift without immediately accepting the new feeling as your own truth. You can feel the room growing heavier and recognize that tightness as a signal worth investigating rather than a command to be followed. Second, you gain the option to interrupt the amplification loop by supplying a different piece of social evidence. A calm voice, a genuine question about what people are actually concerned about, or even a warm look can nudge the shared story in a new direction. This is not about faking positivity or pretending worry does not exist. It is about making the unspoken conversation explicit. The distinction between what belongs to me and what belongs to the group is a skill, not a fixed boundary. Now return one final time to that quiet room, the late arrival, and the spreading silence. The worry is still there, circulating, but now you can see that it is not a fog that rolled in from nowhere. It is a question that everyone answered too quickly, a story that everyone started telling at the same moment. And stories can be revised the moment someone says, out loud, what each person is only feeling inside their chest. The thread that connects our emotions through a room is not a chain that binds us. It is a conversation that we can learn to join with greater clarity. In the end, emotions spread through groups, not because we are weak barriers, but because we are deeply connected enough to write meaning together before a single word has been spoken.